Alright, so today we're going to talk about a portion of the 356 that doesn't get a whole lot of press, just based on me trying to find information about it. So in this case, as you may be able to tell, I'm talking about the front suspension, which I think for the most part doesn't get disassembled all that often. In my case, they for some reason took it, as you can see, completely apart. So now we get to put it all back together. So let's look at what's a fairly simple design, but yet has some complexity to it, kind of like the rest of the 356. So think about any suspension, including that one on the front of that car. There's always a spring configuration of some sort. You know, it could be on newer cars, it could be a coil type spring, a lot of times over the top of, you know, like a McPherson strut type arrangement. But it's a spring that typically has, well, not typically, always has a fixed end. And then if it's a coil, you know, the other end, you know, moves, compresses the spring. In the case of a leaf spring, which leaf springs were around before there were cars, you know, look at old carriages and, you know, wagons, covered wagons, whatever. You know, it was a leaf spring was either an arched, two ends fixed, the middle part moving up and down, or sometimes a C configuration, again, one end fixed, the other end moving up and down, compressing the spring. What Porsche did, and, you know, VW as well early on, was take a set of springs, spring bars, as you can see there's 6 of them sandwiched together, and again there's a fixed point, which is the center, and the trailing arm over here, which attaches to the end of that that leaf spring arrangement, you know, twists. So the center is fixed, the end rotates and twists. So, you know, like I said, kind of simple. If I show you this, you can see it's got the same square dimension as that piece. So I'll show you on the car in a second, but you know, there's 2 torsion tubes up front, this being the torsion spring. The spring slides into the tube. It's affixed in the center by this little hockey puck looking thing, which slides over this. You can see there's a little divot there, and this silver bolt has a tapered end that goes into that divot, and that's what holds the center of this thing in place. And I'll show you in a minute, there's also something that pushes down on this. This can rotate a bit. That can change the ride height of the car in the front. This piece slides into the torsion tube. There's a needle bearing that rides here. There's a couple of white, old, you know, originally they weren't white, they were more of a burgundy-ish color, but a couple of sleeves that you know, control this inner part of this thing, and like I said, a spring on the end, and then the you know, the whole kingpin system attaches to this with the kingpin pins and bushings, and you know, then of course the spindle attaches to that. So that's the way Porsche decided to deal with it. I'll show you where this ends up attaching. So here are your 2 torsion tubes, 1 and 2. This slides inside of it and ends up with this going through. Let me see if I can show it. Hold on. This opening in here, this little square piece through which the holding pin goes through, that ends up inside of here, and then through here goes another pin which pushes down on this, or allows it to rotate the other direction. So again, pretty simple solution. And obviously this nut holds it all together. If I take that off and remove this, okay, now you get a better view. This square piece goes into here, like so. Well, or you can throw it on the floor like that, but it goes into this opening. This pin goes through it into the opening in the torsion tube, and then into the hockey puck, and then into the spring, into that divot piece. This nut locks it in place, and then this piece goes through here, goes in, and rests on the piece that I threw on the floor, and that's what holds it all together. After that, we can then install that trailing arm piece. You know, that spring goes in through there. These are the little white bushing type things that go in and hold the end of the torsion tubes. And then there's a needle bearing, gets driven into the end, and then those trailing arms go in behind that. So that's the deal. That's what we're going to do today. So we'll show you more once I get a little work done here. All right, so I will have to say this is one of the bigger pains in the butt I've ever dealt with an old car, and that's saying a lot. But this is how it looks when all is said and done. The issue here is getting the hockey puck centered exactly right, and not just straight smack in the middle, but also oriented the right way, so that the piece, the set screw underneath, hopefully you can see that, you know, that has to align perfectly to go not only through the you know, the torsion spring, but it has to basically go through the hockey puck and into the torsion spring where that little divot was that I showed you earlier. So it has to be aligned in this structure and through the hockey puck and into the torsion spring. And you have to put that little square piece in there, that that nut that holds it all together screws onto. So a lot of things to align. Not the easiest thing in the world to get it perfectly centered and get the torsion spring perfectly centered so they can all go together. And then this is the other set screw that adjusts the orientation of the torsion spring which essentially sets the ride height of the front suspension. And that's that piece with that nut holding it in place. So simple in concept, not simple in execution. I'd love to know how the Germans did this in the first place. They probably had a tool. I did not. I actually ended up using the, as you can see, I used the handle for my jack to basically go over the torsion spring. It fits kind of perfectly, to be honest. Its inside diameter is big enough to fit over the torsion spring, but the outside diameter is small enough to fit into the tube, torsion tube. And from there, I could kind of whack the hockey puck, as I keep calling it, until it was perfectly centered. And then through feel, sticking my pinky into the threaded hole in the hockey puck, I could feel the divot in the torsion spring that underneath set screw with the it's basically this one. This is the one for the bottom, just to remind you. So I didn't enjoy it at all. Now that it's done, I enjoy looking at it. The only thing taking away from my enjoyment is the fact that I have one more to do underneath. But to do that, I have to get this little chassis carrier thing, dolly, whatever you want to call it, removed, since it's using that lower torsion tube. So I got to get this thing up on jack stands. I need to do that anyway because I need to do the rear as well, so that I can get this transmission put in, get the rear suspension put in, and get the engine put in. So lots to come. Join me next time, and hit subscribe, because as you can see, we got a lot more to do.